you have told us about the 1969 Sino-Soviet border clash after the Sino-Soviet split. But why did the Sino-Soviet split happen in the first place? Both countries were important to each other for many reasons. Did the Americans have any role in this? Okay, so let's talk about the Sino-Soviet clash. Um, the USSR and China both were communist countries, right? We know that in the USSR you had the great strongman Joseph Stalin. In China you had the great strongman Mao Zedong. Yeah, so that's the situation that you had in the 1940s and 1950s. Now, Mao Zedong regarded Stalin as a great hero of his. Yeah, he had genuine respect for Joseph Stalin. Yeah, the USSR always treated China uh, treated China as a junior partner. China was a very poor nation. It was a nation that was in shambles, broken up. The USSR had built up these enormous industries. They had come out on top in World War II. They had a very strong, powerful army. They had developed nuclear weapons. So they obviously were one of the two big superpowers, and they always treated China as a junior partner. And Mao Zedong was fine with that as long as Joseph Stalin was in power in the USSR, because he had genuine admiration and respect for Joseph Stalin. Now, Joseph Stalin died in 1953. Yes, Mao Zedong lived on for a much longer time. So Joseph Stalin dies in 1953, and in his place comes a new leader, Nikita Khrushchev, who was in power for about 9 years, 1953 to 1964 or something. So that's Nikita Khrushchev. Now, Mao Zedong did not respect Nikita Khrushchev to any in any way, the way that he respected Joseph Stalin. He did not have any of that kind of respect for Nikita Khrushchev. He found Nikita Khrushchev to be ideologically vacillating, ideologically weak, and not worthy of the kind of respect that Joseph Stalin deserved. Yeah. Um, so Nikita Khrushchev was in power until from 1953 to 1964. From 1964 to about 1981-82, you had Leonid the Brezhnev, who was in Mao Zedong's eyes an even weaker leader. And all of these things, they eventually led to the Sino-Soviet split. So while Stalin was in power, uh, Mao Zedong was okay with the Soviets treating China as a junior partner. But when these leaders who came in after Stalin, who Mao did not respect that much, and who he considered to be kind of weak and ideologically questionable, and then the USSR still continues treating China as a junior partner, that kind of rankled with Mao Zedong. And then there were these ideological clashes. So on the one hand, you had the USSR's Marxism Leninism. On the other hand, you had China's Maoism. So the Maoists, Mao believed that see in Marxism, in communism, in Marxism especially, you have the idea of the people's revolution, right? This society is a revolutionary society. This the dictatorship of the proletariat and all that. So Mao believed that a revolutionary society should be led by the peasantry, the peasants, the farmers, the proletariat. He believed that the Soviet Union's model of socialism, of communism, was too centralized, it was too bureaucratic, and was kind of bourgeois. It was not revolutionary enough. Yeah. And this uh, perception became accentuated after the demise of Joseph Stalin and the coming to power of Nikita Khrushchev and later Leonid Brezhnev. Yes. Mao also did not like the Soviet Union's policy of what he considered to be peaceful coexistence with the uh, capitalist nations like the US. The Soviets wanted to somehow coexist with the capitalist nations like the US, and the Soviets wanted to show eventually that we will come out on top, and our system, our ideology is the best. But Mao did not like it. He did not like that the Soviets wanted to coexist peacefully with the capitalist countries. He wanted to see a more vigorous and robust struggle against the capitalist countries and the capitalist ideology. And he also was displeased with the Soviet Union's lack of support for various revolutionary movements around the world. The Soviets did support various revolutionary movements and so on, but that was for geopolitical purposes, not from ideological reasons. Yeah. So Mao was from that perspective, a little more ideological and a little more idealistic, you could say. And the other thing is that the USSR was focusing on Eastern Europe. It wanted to increase its influence in Eastern Europe, in what we just spoke about, the Warsaw Pact countries, the Eastern Europe satellite states of the USSR. Yeah, and the USSR was focusing on countering the US in that region, whereas China was focusing on consolidating its control over China and spreading communism again and revolution in the third world. So it was again more ideological from the Chinese perspective. So you had these very stark differences, mainly ideological differences. So from the Maoist perspective, from the Chinese perspective, the Soviets were going soft, and they were not communist enough, and they were not hardline enough. Yeah, and obviously we had the personal animosity between Mao Zedong and Nikita Khrushchev. So that also was a factor. So all of this eventually led to what we call the Sino-Soviet split, which is slowly happened after the death of Stalin, from the 1950s to the 1960s onwards. You had which all culminated in the disaster of the Ussuri River clashes of 1969. Let's go to the map. Where's the map? Here's the map. Where's the map? Here we are. The Ussuri River clashes, which the Ussuri River is now the border of Russia and China. So somewhere over here we had this island. What was it called? The Zhenbao Island. Where's the Zhenbao Island? Okay, I try to find it, and then I miss it. I'm sure it's here somewhere. Is it here? Let's just Google it for convenience. Zhenbao Island is here. It's here. The island is here. So it's over here that the this became a flashpoint. The two nations clashed over here. There were rather brutal military clashes. Several hundred soldiers died total. Both sides claim that the other side lost more soldiers and all that. In the aftermath of the Ussuri River clashes, uh, the USSR actually decided to nuke China. Yeah, the Soviets decided to nuke China, and it was the Americans that intervened. The Americans intervened, and they threatened Russia with a retaliatory strike. They threatened the USSR with a retaliatory strike if the Soviets went ahead with a nuclear strike on China. Essentially, it's the Americans that saved China, and this action eventually paved the way for the Sino-American détente, which happened under the leadership of who was it? Nixon, Kissinger, and Mao Zedong, and that's what happened, right? So that is the whole deal. So the Sino-Soviet split was mainly ideological, and also we had differences of perception of the border and various other factors, and animosity between the leaders of the two nations. All of these things combined together to create the Sino-Soviet split.